Hey everybody, it's John the Other here, obviously. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I did a video in which I said the men's rights movement, the MRM, is toast. And I think I probably, annoyed one or two people when I said that. Now, I am now talking about it from the outside because I no longer consider myself a part of that. Although other people, because of the topic matter of my videos, may say that I still am. Whatever, doesn't matter. The men's rights movement, as it presently exists, is built on at least one assumption that I think is an incorrect, mistaken assumption. And that is the assumption that there is out there in the wider blue pill world, particularly among women who basically set the tone and set the narrative of social reality, that there is compassion for men and boys. That when we look at the issues of the rates of male homelessness or suicide or unemployment or disenfranchisement in education or disparities in criminal sentencing or being subject to violent criminal victimization, any of these issues which the movement has been talking about for years, things are not in dispute. It's only the social reality of how they're perceived that is really up for grabs. That's like, well, tough luck, man up. Seems to be the general consensus. And if a guy is damaged or wounded or hurt or in some way broken so that he's no longer of service to other people, that he's no longer of convenient utility, then we disregard men's humanity and we basically throw them away like a disposable appliance. And the men's rights movement, as it exists, as it has existed, follows the practices that it does because those people in the movement believe that there is a compassion to be tapped into. That women, if they can just be shown with the right rhetoric or, made to realize or woken up in some way and tap into their humanity, then we can begin to affect some change in society for the positive. That's the assumption, that there is a compassion to be tapped into. And I don't think that's correct. I think that is a false assumption. And that's the foundation of why I said the men's rights movement is toast. But there's another assumption on the other side. And you could call this the feminist side, you could call it the gynocentric side, you could call it the blue pill side. There is another assumption, and this is not an assumption about women, it's an assumption about men, and principally an assumption made by women about men. And of course that's not the assumption that men are predatory or animalistic or violent or rapey or misogyny, any of the pejoratives. That's not the assumption that's being made. Although that's all in all of the public rhetoric of the anti-male ideology that permeates so much of the public narrative. The assumption about men is that no matter how much shit you heap on men as a social class, they will continue to protect and provide for women. That in a violent confrontation where there's a woman being, aggressive and violent and brutal towards somebody, the assumption is even the people to whom she is being violent and aggressive, they will do their best to prevent her from coming to harm. That's the assumption, and it's an assumption foundational, absolutely foundational to every form of gynocentrism, to feminism, to traditional gynocentrism, the left and the right. And unfortunately, and I say unfortunately, it's true. It's mostly a true assumption. Now, I don't want to go too deeply into why that factor, why that feature of male behavior is present. There's people who's going to say it's evolutionary, it's purely biological. There's other people who are going to say It's a learned behavior. It's culturally socialized. I happen to think it's a little from column A and a little from column B, but it actually doesn't matter where it comes from, at least for the purposes of this discussion. The belief, deep-seated and subconscious and unexamined for the most part, just not even recognized that it is a belief, but it informs behavior, so you can tell it's a belief, that men will act against their own interests to protect women. They will self-sacrifice. They'll put themselves at risk. They will allow physical violence against themselves from women while protecting the woman from coming to harm. You look at a lot of the men's rights conference protest stuff, some of the stuff that I saw on video in the Toronto protests. Actually, there's a video on my channel called This Is Feminism. It's a picture of a young feminist at the University of Toronto heaping the most vicious scorn and abuse that she can muster on a conference attendee who she doesn't know. She doesn't know whether he's just an audience member or a speaker, and she's just tearing into him. And she knows that she's doing that with the immunity idol that nobody will harm her. In fact, the guy she's tearing into will also, when it comes down to it, protect her from harm. Now try to imagine the same thing between two men or two women. A man heaping that level of scorn and abuse on another man would have his head grabbed and bashed on the ground, probably. And two women who did that to each other, a woman who attacked, who verbally eviscerated another woman, would very quickly find her finger, the other woman's fingers in her eyes, probably. But when women do that to men, there is an assumption that the men will, even as they act to defend themselves, will do it in a way that protects the woman from coming to any harm. And this permeates through all society, not just in sort of a physical confrontation. It permeates, it's present in domestic policy, it's present in hiring practices, it's present in the affirmative action in the universities. The men, even as they are attacked and heaped with scorn and spat upon and marginalized and pushed to the side and pushed into dangerous, dirty jobs where they sacrifice their safety and often their lives, they'll still put the interests of the women in their lives ahead of their own interests, the safety of the women in their lives ahead of their own. And that's an underlying assumption that very sadly is true. This is why feminism is so vitriolic. This is why the rhetoric of feminism is so hateful and violent towards men, because they know that they can be as vicious as they want, and the men they're attacking, while they might say, hey, come on, this is totally uncalled for, or even you're a fucking bitch, will not turn around and get really nasty and aggressive with them in the same way that is happening to the men. I talked briefly about whether this is biological or learned, or a little of both. The MGTOW movement, as it exists right now, it's going through a growth phase. It's actually going through a transition phase. I don't know how big it's going to get. I don't know how fast it's going to get big. But I mean, it's big enough that the mainstream is talking about it. We got people talking about Peter Pan syndrome. That's a pejorative. Failure to launch, another pejorative. These are attempts to shame men sort of back into the track of protect, provide, and get on the treadmill and die when it's convenient for others. Men need to recognize this urge to protect women, and also need to recognize that it's pathological, it's not a healthy behavior. It's a self-destructive, counterproductive behavior. Once it's recognized, it can be got rid of. Stop protecting women. Treat them like they're men. The things that feminists do and say, they have that, immunity idol, right? They know they're protected because men, even as they're attacked, will still act to protect the safety and the feelings of these sociopaths. Violent, psychopathic, vicious, sadistic people. It's time to set aside that urge to protect women. Just push it off the table. woman falls on her face. Don't protect her, don't help her. Why would we? I mean, it's illogical. And I know I've had people before saying, I did a video a while back where I said I wouldn't stop a rape. And I've had people come at me and say, you wouldn't help a woman! A woman! Oh my God, you wouldn't help a woman! Like the fact that somebody is a woman makes them different from other people. Makes them somehow special. Like, better. More deserving of the consideration we give to just general purpose humans. How stupid. We actually do women no favors at all in the long term when we protect them from the consequences of their own choices and behavior. What we're actually doing is treating them like they're incompetent children. You know, if you have a little kid, or if you have, you know, a brother or a sister who has a little kid, when they're really little, and they really haven't learned how to get along with other people yet, when they get frustrated, they might, you know, bang on you with their fists, their little child fists. And when that happens, you are somewhat indulgent of that. I mean, you don't let them keep doing it, but you don't treat them like you would an adult who did that to you. You wouldn't act like a child where you just kind of go, oh, they're there. You'd basically slap them down rapidly and without much compunction because you're recognizing that they're an adult, right? You can't just throw punches at me. Knock it off, you effing moron. Whack! You defend yourself. But you don't against a child. You protect the child. So are we treating women as adults or are we treating them as children when they attack us? And I don't just mean with their fists, verbally, through the courts, through rhetoric, through controlling public discourse, and so on. We're abetting and enabling the maintenance of child mind. Do you think that does anybody any good? Certainly it does no good for women. It makes them retarded. And I'm not making this argument for the benefit of women. At all. At all. No. Don't get the idea that I've suddenly gone white knight here. The MGTOW phenomenon, and I don't even call it a movement, the phenomenon is growing and evolving, and I am going to suggest that abandoning the idea of protecting women must become critical and key. Let them fall on their face. Let them fall off a cliff. Let them catch on fire. Treat them like they're fucking adults. Anyway, that's all my little rant. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.